Srimad, His Divine Loving Grace, Abhaya Charnaravinda, Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Vishnupad, Parma Rajaga Acharya Astotar Stata Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki, Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinatha Shamakunda Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki, Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki, Ganga Mai ki, Jamuna Mai ki, Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani ki, Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Jnanatamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurue Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Utaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagadatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Sta Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vishubhanu Shruti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namaste Girirajaya Shri Govardhana Namane Nashesha Klesha Nashaya Paramananda Daine Vancha Kalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mare Kabando Matsangin, Madguru Manmadana, Madnistaraka Madbhagya, Madananda Namostate, Asadu Sadu Tadayanati Nichotata Karana Muncha Karachinmam, Premnarit Katayos Pura, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritta Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nastapreshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Utamashloke Bhaktir Babadina Ishtiki. Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter number 28, King Puranjana becomes a woman in his next life. Text number 5. Text numbers 5. Yeah. Tasyam prapidya manayam Abhimani Puranjana Vapur Vidham Stapan Kutumbi Mamata Kula Tasyam Prapidyamanayam Abhimani Puranjana Avaporo Vidham Stapan Kutimbi Mamat mamata kula.
Kutumbi mamata kula.
Tasyam prapidyamanayam.
Tasyam pravidyamanaya.
Abhimani puranjana.
Abhimani puranjana.
Avapuro vidam stapan.
Avapuro vidam stapa.
Kutumbi mamata kula.
Kutumbi mamata kula. Tasyam pravidyamanaya.
Tasyam prapidyamanayam.
Abhimani puranjana.
Abhimani puranjana.
Avapuro vidam stapa.
Avapuro vidam stapan.
Kutumbi mamata kula.
Kutumbi mamata kula.
Tasyam pravidyamanaya. Abhimani puranjana. Avapuro vidam stapa. Kutumbi mamata kula.
Tasyam
Tasyam
prapidyamanayam. Abhimani puranjana. Avapuro vidam stapan. Kutumbi mamata kula. Tasyam prapadidyamanayam. Abhimani puranjana. Avapuro vidam stapan. Kutumbi mamata kula. Okay, word for word meanings. Tasyam, when the city. Prapidyamanayam, was put into different difficulties. Abhimani, too much absorbed. Paranjana, King Paranjana. Alapa, achieved. Uru, many. Vidan, varieties. Tapan, pains. Kutumbi, family man. Mamata akulaha, too much affected by attachment to family. Translation. When the city was thus endangered by the soldiers and Kalakanya, King Paranjana, being overly absorbed in affection for his family, was placed in difficulty by the attack of Yavanaraj and Kalakanya. 1 second. Purport. When we refer to the body, we include the external gross body with its various limbs, as well as the mind, intelligence, and ego. In old age, these all become weak when they are attacked by different diseases. The proprietor of the body, the living soul, becomes very sad at not being able to use the field of activities properly. In Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly explained that the living entity is the proprietor of this body, Kshetragya, and that the body is the field of activities, Kshetra. When a field is overgrown with the thorns and weeds, it becomes very difficult for the owner to work it. That is the position of the spirit soul when the body itself becomes a burden due to disease. Extra burdens are placed on the body in the form of anxiety and general deterioration of the bodily functions. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharade Nirvashesha Shambhuvadi Paschatade Shatarade. So we've been hearing about King Paranjana Maharaj, and now King Paranjana is coming to his point of death. And once again, we hear this every day, and we've heard this for many years, about birth, death, old age, and disease. And Krishna explains that it's an item of knowledge. It's a sign of a learned person to perceive the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. Many times when you're preaching and you're speaking to people and you say, you have to take birth again. They don't understand the significance, the pain involved in that. They don't understand why that is so bad. Of course, the famous story is Prabhupada said, you can become dog in your next life. And the man raised his hand and said, what's wrong with being a dog? And Prabhupada said, you have my blessings. They don't mind becoming dog. Because they're not conscious. They're not conscious of the reality of the suffering involved in the material world. It's a symptom of ignorance to become unconscious of the suffering. This is why we have to come to the mode of goodness. We've been speaking in my Srimad Bhagavatam class on Wednesday evening. We have one nice new lady there, and she's just hearing about the modes of material nature for the first time. And she's figuring out how it makes so much sense. Because before one understands the modes, we don't understand why people act the way they act. Why someone can do something that would be completely against their self-interest. And the common example I've been giving is that why is one attracted to smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, so many things like that? We understand, I mean, especially in my generation, there's so much education. You know, I was in 5th grade. There was every single week we had an hour class about the dangers of tobacco. Every week for at least for a whole semester. And we went over every type of tobacco. We looked at all the cancer images, you know, all the statistics. And I didn't want to smoke after, you know, going through that class. But still, I find that so many of my friends, they smoke. Even though they understand that it's bad for you, it'll kill you, it causes cancer, makes your breath stink, so many, you know, negative effects. But because of the mode of ignorance, one feels attracted to that. Alcohol is a poison. You can pour alcohol on an insect, the insect just is wiped out immediately. It's a cell poison. Yet we put it in our body and ingest it for so-called pleasure. This is a symptom of the mode of ignorance. One isn't seeing things as they are. And the mode of passion is characterized by this sexes. And people are attracted to the body, which is full of so many gross functions and so many unpleasant things. But in the mode of passion, this becomes very attractive. So one who comes to the mode of goodness sees things as they are. They see everything in its proper place. And that this is the mating process, this is a poison, its proper place. Not that they're condemning anything, but they understand its actual position. They can see the reality. Therefore, one has to be exposed to the mode of goodness, which brings about sattva gyan. Sattva gyan is equivalent or associated with that knowledge by which one can understand I'm not this body. It's not necessarily transcendental knowledge of understanding Krishna, understanding the personality of Godhead, but at least one can understand I'm not this body. And that, therefore, the mode of goodness is characterized by a condition of, anybody know? What's the characteristic of the mode of goodness? What is someone conditioned by?
Goodness.
Knowledge and happiness. Someone in the mode of goodness is conditioned by knowledge and happiness. Someone in the mode of passion is characterized by fruitive activity. And someone in the mode of ignorance is conditioned by madness and illusion and darkness. So we want to come to the platform of goodness, although that's still conditioning, but this means that one can understand things as they are. So one's intelligence is totally wiped out if they're not in the mode of goodness. And if we go by Krishna's definition of intelligence, and we understand the mode of goodness is the platform of real intelligence, and we can understand that the world's in real bad shape. Because none of the leaders, none of the opposition of the leaders, none of them have any intelligence whatsoever. Because they don't understand. They have no sattva gun. There's not even a tinge of sattva gun. Not even a tinge. You know, just completely rajasic and tamasic. And so because of this, we're, you know, the blind leading the blind, we're going downhill rapidly. So we have to come to the mode of goodness to understand the danger of the danger of this birth and death. The mode of goodness can understand this. In the famous example, the story given about King Indra, right? He had to become as Gaur Sundar says, he had to become a pork. He had to become a pig in his next life. So, he became conditioned to that. Oh, I'm happy with my stool and my, my pig wife and all my different hog facilities. I'm happy with them. I go back to being Indra. So he was satisfied. So in the same way, the living entity, he can become okay in almost any position. Prabhupada also gives the example of a dying man. I say, how are you doing today? And he says, oh, I'm good. But actually he's dying. So we can find a way to become okay in any condition if we're conditioned by the modes of material nature. Therefore, intelligence behooves us to try to approach the mode of goodness and to be able to see things as they are. Because the living entity becomes very sad when he can't enjoy. I like this, way Prabhupada words this, that the jiva becomes sad because he's unable to enjoy the body. And we see that that's the main cause of sadness and depression in the world. In China, it's like it's like a national emergency that men, they don't have sex partners because there's not enough girls. So they're declaring an emergency because all these men are depressed. And also no one's having children there. All the workers are practically in their 50s and 60s. And the young people are so depressed that they're just not working. So it's actually, economic collapse is inevitable there. You probably heard me say that. So anyhow, yeah, it's a big problem. And when I was in India, somehow I got caught on this, I was reading a little bit about North Korea for some reason. I don't know what got me on that, but apparently Kim Jong-un, the dictator of North Korea, he has a team of 10,000 doctors working day and night to try to keep him alive forever. That is like Hiranyakashipu level demon. He actually has, all these doctors are working, they're just exclusively dedicated to trying to find a way to make this guy immortal. But it's inevitable because he can't see that we're not this body. So we become sad, we become disturbed when we can't enjoy. This is the reason behind our suffering. When we hear that word matsarya, meaning envy, but there's actually a broader definition of matsarya. We think of envy as I want what you have. But the real definition of matsarya doesn't just mean I want what you have. It means I'm unsatisfied with. And so in that sense, we're all full of matsarya. I'm unsatisfied. I'm not happy with the circumstances around me. And this is a type of matsarya. It means we're angry at Krishna for not supplying things the way we want them to be. So one of the austerities of the mind is to become satisfied. Prabhupada said it's very difficult, but the mind should become satisfied. And that can be developed by developing mode of goodness. And so the mode of goodness is developed primarily by associating with those in the mode of goodness and with those times and circumstances in the mode of goodness. Purusha prakriti stohi, bhankte prakriti jangunam, karnam gunasango syad syada sadyani jonmashu. So, Purusha prakriti stohi, the living entity situated in this material world, in this prakriti, bhankte prakriti jangunan, he's going about his business, enjoying various bhogas, various enjoyments, born of jana sagunan, born of the modes of material nature. Karna sanga sango syat, because he's associating with those modes of nature. He's associating with different modes of nature, therefore he's enjoying these modes. Therefore, sada sad yoni janmashu, he's taking births in various good and evil species. So we have to develop mode of goodness with a little intelligence, with a little bit of mercy of the devotees. We can associate with devotees and we can begin to cultivate the proper knowledge by which we can see this and we can start to become satisfied. So we're hearing about how King Puranjana, he is suffering in family life. He wasn't a grihastha, he was a grihamedi. And so, one of the statements in the Bhagavatam is that the world was created for two reasons. This material world. What are those two reasons? Anybody know? That's one reason. To help rectify conditioned souls. And the other reason is to fulfill our desires. So we come here to fulfill desires and to become rectified and go back home, back to Godhead. Because Krishna can just wipe us out of existence if he wanted to. We can, or we can do. But no, the material world exists for our rectification as well as our desire to lord it over. Krishna is giving us that facility out of his kindness. It's not that it's just a punishment. He's giving us the facility. You want to lord it over? Here, you can go ahead and try. And if you play the cards right, you can enjoy pretty much unlimitedly. You can be a Brahma, about as high as it gets, and then you can come back home, back to Godhead. In the 11th canto, it's described by our acharyas that there's different types of Brahmas. There's Karmi Brahmas, there's Yogi Brahmas, there's Jnani Brahmas, and then there's Bhakta Brahmas. We're lucky enough to have a Bhakta Brahma in our universe, because the other Brahmas, they go down, but the Bhakta Brahma, he goes up. And the whole universe is designed in such a way to help us come to that platform, I would think. So, yeah, the material world exists for two reasons. We come here to fulfill desires, and therefore one can fulfill their desires in two ways. They can fulfill their desires in the sinful way, or they can fulfill their desires in the pious way. Both are ignorant, both are not Krishna conscious, but if one fulfills their desires in the pious way, then they make progress toward Krishna consciousness. They make progress in spiritual life. Therefore, all these facilities, we're hearing a lot about like marriage, and it's like, well, King, he's so much more pious than 90% of us, So many people are unmarried and engaging in so many sinful types of enjoyment. But King Puranjan, he's married. That's even, there's some piety there. But still, it's being condemned by Narada Muni and the Acharyas because it's a materialistic marriage. So there's primary and secondary devotional services. It's primary devotional service, hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. Those are the things we want to cultivate in the end of our life. That's what's going to save us. It's going to take us back to Godhead. It's really going to uplift us. And then the secondary things are things we have to do, pious rituals, marriage, shraddha, varnashram, all these things we're doing to help us to come to the platform of proper hearing and chanting, karma yoga activities. So I wanted to point out that the real challenge of this, of this enjoyment is not the gross things for the devotees, it's the subtle. It's the subtle enjoyment. We want to become recognized, false ego. We want fame, profit, adoration, and distinction. And the false ego, he's so tricky. We do so many things, especially in my younger world, like people got to post on Facebook. What are they posting pictures of? They're posting pictures of their false ego. Actually, it's all there is to it. It's not like it's benefiting anybody. It's just a action completely out of false ego. I got to see, look at me. I'm doing this service. I'm doing that. I'm leading a kirtan. I'm at the Grand Canyon. It's all false ego. And also this defensive, right? People become defensive. Defending is considered one of the four principles of material life: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And Prabhupada says out of all of them, defending is the hardest to overcome. And so we think of defending as generally like I pick up my sword or I pick up my rocks and my fist and we go out and we defend, we fight. But actually defending is happening all around us when we defend our false ego. Someone offends you, someone says something you don't like, and now I gotta defend. What am I defending? If I criticize you and you get defensive, what are you defending? Defending your false ego. That's basically it. That's just animalistic behavior. There's 6 types of aggressors, right? Krishna speaks about the aggressors in Bhagavad Gita. He who gives poison, he who comes to the fire, he who comes to life. These are all bona fide opportunities to become defensive, as well as defending a Vaishnava, the spiritual master, or Krishna. Those are bona fide times to become defensive. But if someone's just criticizing us, why should we become defensive? Because we're not this body. We have nothing to do with this material body. If we have sattva gyan and we see things as they are, then we don't need to become defensive. But the instant we become defensive, that's acting out of false ego. Krishna says we'll become lost. And when we become lost, then the fruit of it chain begins. The chain of fruit of activity begins. We're acting out of false ego. And so in our devotional service, it's very subtle how we can try to want to be recognized. Dhira Prabhu was speaking about this nicely yesterday, that one has this subtle desire for recognition in so many ways, just a little bit of a subtle desire. And if we hold on to that, then that's maintaining a material attachment, even though we're understanding so many instructions about chanting the holy name. Therefore, our japa, our chanting doesn't really take us to the place it's meant to take us. Therefore, we have to begin to recognize all the different false ego. This Mataji in Mayapur, who false ego, she gives out some like examples. One example is the false ego. Prabhupada says he's always trying to feel important. He always wants to feel important. Somehow or another, let me feel important. Let me show my importance. And therefore, the false ego uses the guru as a means to uplift himself. Like, I may not be as great as the guru, but if I'm seen as close to the guru, then people will see that I'm also important. And so they speak about my guru this, my guru that, very, very, very strong about my guru, because it's actually a way to look at me or my deities. I worship so many deities, and look at my deities. They're so beautiful. And you can get like that. And of course, there's some genuine, I show people my deities every day. I send different pictures, different people in, but it's out of genuine, they like to take darshan. But it can be a false ego booster also. And then sometimes even, glorification of a devotee is very nice. But sometimes when you become aware of this, you start seeing it everywhere, especially amongst younger devotees. How sometimes someone will come glorify you, and they want to be glorified back. That's basically it's a whole thing. And you'll find it, oh, Prabhu, you're so nice, and this and that. And then, you'll just, thank you very much. And then when you don't say anything back to them, you can see them become like, uh-oh, I'm disturbed, because actually it wasn't real. Very common. Very common. So there's a genuine type of glorification of Vaishnavas that comes from the heart. Where you can glorify someone, in a private setting. You can tell them good job, where it's actually a heartfelt thing. Because you don't want to boost their false ego either. When we become aware of that. And so it's all these, we are speaking about false egos because that desire to enjoy starts in the false ego, and then it goes to the gross things, right? Even the materialistic grihastha life is starting with this subtle thing. I want to feel adored. I want to feel, all these things. I want to feel like I'm on top of it. I want to feel like I'm really liked. So we've heard about the effects of sense gratification, the life of a grihamedi, nidraya hirite yaktam, vyavyayena chavavayaha, diva chartehaya rajam kutumba baranenava. The lives of such envious householders are spent in the nighttime, either indulging in sex or sleeping, in the daytime making money and maintaining family members. That's King Paranjana. So we don't want to be that. We want to be grihastas or just devotees. So when you start analyzing, I know that once I started becoming more aware of like the subtle desires and how the subtle desires lead to gross desires, it really opened my eyes to how fallen I am. And that's kind of like more, I guess each day we figure out, progress, but we're making progress by figuring out how much more fallen we are. It's like a new real revelation every day. Oh, I'm more fallen than I thought. I'm more fallen than I thought. So I had some verses I wanted to bring out about the process of bhakti, because it's not a hopeless situation. That's what I want to get at is, seems like impossible to overcome a lot of this stuff, but it's really not. It's a beautiful process that will lead us to devotional service, lead us to prema bhakti. And we know there's 9 stages of bhakti, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes about 14 stages of bhakti. And he breaks them down in these verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 2, verse number 16, Sutta says, Shrushusho Shradanasya Vasudeva Katal Ruchihi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. And he's describing that I'll just read the translations, actually. I just realized I loaded up. Thought they were in this book. So this verse covers 3 stages of Bhakti Yoga. Let me see here. The Prabhupada translates is, O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains an affinity for hearing the message of Vasudeva. So what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says is that the first step in Bhakti Yoga, the first step in overcoming sense gratification, overcoming the false ego, is Satam Kripa. One has to get the causeless mercy of a devotee. How do they do that? The devotee engages them in some service. They eat some prasadam. They render some type of devotional service to a devotee. They give a donation for a book. That's why book distribution is so powerful, just by giving a donation, coming and spending some money at the restaurant. This is Srila Prabhupada's Satam Kripa, causeless mercy, that they're engaging in some type of service. So that's why it's described, Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Vasudeva Kataruchihi, that by rendering some service, a little bit of service to a great soul, one develops Vasudeva Kataruchihi. That's why we find people who eat at the restaurant for so many years, devoted to prasadam, and then all of a sudden they're coming to all the classes and they're hearing, because this is that Satam Kripa, they're rendering some service, and therefore they're developing a taste for receiving the message of Vasudeva. So the next set is Mahat Seva. That's the next step. They're doing some seva to a great soul, to Srila Prabhupada. We're giving everybody the facility to serve Prabhupada by going and distributing books, by going on Harinam, by doing these things. So in this way, we shouldn't think that these things are useless. We shouldn't think that going out and doing chanting on the streets is useless. Every person who hears the holy name, every person who even appreciates a devotee chanting, who thinks that's pretty, every single person begins their devotional service. That's the Satam Kripa. And just by doing a little chanting themselves, if you can engage them in chanting, can you say Hare Krishna? And they say Hare Krishna. That's Maha, a service to devotees. And therefore, they're getting benefit from that. And they will make progress in their spiritual life. And then one develops faith. So if one is serving devotees, one develops faith. What is that faith? What is that first faith? The first faith we get is that these devotees are onto something, and that the material world is not as cool as I thought it was. Yehi samsparsha jaboga dukkha yoniya evate ariyatavanta konteya natesha ramate buddha. The wise man doesn't delight in the pleasures of the senses, because such pleasures have a beginning and an end. So one develops some faith in the devotees, shraddha. And then one begins the bhajana kriya process, right? Guru pradashraya. One seeks shelter at the feet of a guru. So all this comes from rendering a little service. So if we can get people to just do a little bit of devotional service. People come here, they want to do something Mother Sundamani has them painting. That painting is the ultimate purification process. It's just the ultimate purifier that they're painting, and then their heart is becoming purified. All these things are taking place. The Satam Kripa, the causeless mercy of the devotees, is taking place. The Mahat Seva, the service to Srila Prabhupada, is taking place. The faith in the devotees is being developed by this service. And therefore, at a certain point, one develops the desire to take a guru. I remember when Gauranga Prema first came, he was, here, and then started doing some service, and then long hair, and then all of a sudden, one day he just shows up and he says, I think I want to get initiated. I'm chanting 16 rounds and following 4 regulative principles. I think I want to shave my head. And so then you have this immediate bhajana kriya begins, right? The bhajana kriya begins. And so that's the desire to approach a spiritual master. This is a process of purification. So we've all mostly passed that point here. And the next verse is famous verse, which I always think of Ananta every time I chant this verse. Shrinvata swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyantasta hyabadrani vidanoti saritsatam. So it's described Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So this is called Bhajaneshu Spriya, eagerness to worship the Lord. So one develops eagerness to worship the Lord after approaching a guru and beginning this process of hearing. So when you hear about Krishna, you develop an eagerness to worship Krishna. That's not really hard to figure out. Therefore, if we want to make progress in Krishna consciousness, we have to hear. And if we want to hear, we have to serve devotees. It's a beautiful process, really. It's all scientifically laid out by our acharyas. Service to devotees leads one to taste for hearing. Taste for hearing leads one to eagerness to worship Krishna, which leads to taste for chanting. So Prabhupada's given us the whole program. Prabhupada understood. It wasn't that Prabhupada was whimsically making the decision, oh, you can't chant 64 rounds, chant 16 rounds, and do lots of service. That wasn't a whimsical decision. Prabhupada understood that if you chant 16 rounds, that's good. But if you do lots of service, then your propensity and your desire to chant will increase. Yes, Prabhupada understood the science so clearly. So, Bhajaneshu Spriya, one becomes eager to hear, and then at that stage, the heart is being cleansed. Abhadrani, anarthas. Krishna is cleansing the anarthas from our heart. So, after serving devotees, so it's so important we don't mess up any of these stages because it's all scientific process. A plus B equals C, right? It's a scientific process. It's a formula. So if we mess up the service to devotees by offending devotees, or I don't need to serve the devotees, I don't have to have the proper mood with the devotees. When you mess that up, you all of a sudden you block your ability to hear. That's why you'll find someone can be really, and they can be engaging in Krishna consciousness. They can have a desire to hear, a desire to chant. And then all of a sudden they'll make tons of offenses, and you'll see they don't have any taste for chanting anymore. They don't have any taste for hearing anymore. Yeah, we've seen it. Even I've seen it. We've seen it. Devotees come and they have some taste for chanting and hearing, and then all of a sudden they don't have taste for chanting and hearing. And I mean, just recently there was an incident like that. Someone came, they were loving it. Then all of a sudden, offenses, blaspheming devotees, saying really outrageous things about devotees. And then I don't want to chant. I don't want to come near the devotees. I'm done. It's a science. So it's a science. You hear, you serve the devotees, you appreciate the devotees, you bow down before the devotees, you develop a taste for hearing. Then you develop a taste for chanting, and therefore the heart becomes cleansed. The heart becomes cleansed. In the next verse is Nishta, Ananartana Vritti, famous verse, Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So one develops bhakti. Loving service to the Lord begins at that stage of steady hearing. Now I'm a steady hearer. I come to Bhagavatam class every day. I have a steady sadhana. The stage of Nishta is arising. And at that stage, the anarthas in the heart are greatly reduced. So one can see that someone in the stage of Nishta, they still may have some weird behavior once in a while. There may be like a weird slip up, into some weird things. But generally, they're just steady in their service. They're respectful and humble. And so, although they're still fighting with anarthas, they've greatly reduced that control. And Nishta isn't just, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he elaborates on it more deeply, that there's different stages of bhajana kriya. And so, all these different things. One can become steady in their humility. One can become steady in their service. One can be steady in their sadhana. So even if there's steadiness begins in the mind and the body, but it begins its different stages. But one starts to see some steadiness. And so that's coming from this Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. By rendering service to the book Bhagavat and the person Bhagavat on a daily basis, one becomes purified in the heart. That's why we should read every day and hear every day. That's it. That's the process right there. Read and hear every day, chant every day. And then anartha pagamam, a disappearance of the obstacles in devotional service. So when you hear every day and you develop a steadiness, all the inauspicious things, including, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, nam-aparads. So it's very difficult to overcome nam-aparad, right? It's very difficult, especially the two nam-aparads, very difficult to overcome. First one, blasphemy, criticizing. We're very, very conditioned to criticize. Very difficult to overcome material desires, to maintain, let go of that attachment. But if we develop a steadiness in hearing, which we've got from serving, then we can overcome namaparad. And I'm not like any great devotee, but I'm like that. My japa has gotten so much better over the years. And when I went to Mayapur and I got to hear for 4 months straight and just hear and hear and hear and hear and hear and render service to my guru every day, that I've come back and my japa has been on it. It's been so much increased since I've been back in Tucson. Every single day I'd get to chant my rounds practically before Mangalarti. It's Krishna's mercy and my Guru Maharaj's mercy, the mercy of the Bhagavatam. Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya. And at that stage, all the things in the heart become relaxed. So then namaparads begin to disappear. They begin to go away. And so one begins to experience the effects of namabhas. Namabhas is the stage where all the external effects of chanting begin. One hasn't developed love of God. One isn't a prema bhakta yet. But one is experiencing liberation. One is experiencing all the effects of chanting Hare Krishna. The steadiness of mind, the calmness, all the wonderful effects. All the sins being destroyed. So then, loving service unto Uttama Shloka is established as an irrevocable fact. One is experiencing this real spiritual life at this stage. And so it's easy to overcome, yet still one isn't completely pure. At the stage of Nishta, there's still thoughts of anarthas, but one doesn't act on them. One is completely steady. But still they may have some attraction here or there or this or that. And once in a while they may, squirm off and do something weird. But Krishna forgives them, right? Krishna forgives them because they're not going to leave Krishna. They're dedicated to Krishna. So in the next verse, Tada Rajas Tamo Bhava Kamalobadayaschaye Cheta Etiranavedam Stitam Satve Prasidati. So then it said, as soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust and desire and hankering, disappear from the heart. The devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. So this is the stage of ruchi and ashakti. That's when complete goodness is starting to manifest. One is actually experiencing real sattva gyan. He understands I'm not this body, and we understand from Bhagavad Gita, if you understand you're not this body, if you're a Brahmabhuta, mad bhaktim labate param. Then real attachment and real love for Krishna begins. So at the stage of ruchi, that's when real love for Krishna is actually taking place. Now such a person is really tasting the holy name. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, the heart is no longer pierced by sense, lack of taste for material objects, spiritual taste arises. So in that stage of Tada Rajas Tamo Bhava, that all the Rajas and Tamas, Kama Lobadesche, the lust and the anger and the greed, they've become so slackened in the practitioner of Bhakti Yoga that he begins to relish hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. He's no longer a sadhana bhakta. This is the beginning of Raganuga Bhakti. It starts here. And then asakti, then one becomes very firmly attached. The mind is unaffected due to being established in goodness, and one becomes completely happy. Stitam sattve prasidati. That situatedness in goodness, he becomes happy. He becomes joyful. And then the next stage is bhava, right? Evam prasana manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vigya mukta sangasya jayate. So it's described by acharyas that bhava begins when pure goodness takes over. When someone comes to the stage of complete pure goodness, like Lord Shiva is always in pure goodness, he describes in the 4th canto. When someone comes to that stage, they're in the stage of bhava, meaning they're always in an emotional relationship with the personality of Godhead. Evam prasana manaso. Prasana means enlivened or happy. So the mind itself becomes enlivened by devotional service. The mind is enlivened and excited to perform bhakti yoga. And one has arati. He's very fond, very, very attached to Krishna. And Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha. One has scientific knowledge, Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam, of the personality of Godhead. It's complete revelation. There's no doubt in his heart. He's realized Krishna. He's free from all these lower modes. And he's engaging in pure devotional service. And then the next is all these different things that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur lays out at this stage. Darshanam, one sees the Supreme Lord, and Harir Madhuri Anubhava, direct experience of the Lord's conjugal pastimes. These are all things that are laid out. So it is a science. It is a science that's laid out. So we can overcome all of this stuff if we follow the science. All this is kind of beyond our level at this point. And then, of course, the last verse is Vidyate Hriya Grantis, Chidyante Sarva Samshayaha, Kshinyate Chasya Karmani, Drista Evat Manishvare. Thus the knot in the heart is pierced, all misgivings are cut to pieces, the chain of karma is terminated when one sees the self as master. The stage of prema, one's completely liberated and goes back to Godhead. However, at our level, we can at least understand that if we're struggling with lower modes of material nature, attachments and so forth, like paranjana, if we don't want to be affected by these sense desires, we can follow the simple process of Syan Mahat Sevaya, Vasudeva Katarujihi. Serve the Vaishnavas properly, therefore develop taste for hearing. By hearing, Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana, our heart becomes cleansed. When our heart becomes cleansed, we become steady in devotional service and we begin to chant the holy name and relish the holy name. And then from that stage of Nishta, it's described that everything becomes a lot easier. Then one begins making rapid progress. But that hard, long desert of Anartha Nivriti, when we understand it scientifically, let me have an eagerness to serve the Vaishnavas. Let me have an eagerness to hear. Then we'll make very much progress. So that's all I have to say. All these verses are kind of the same. It's kind of hard to get a class going. He's like, that was the last verse was the same verse. Any questions? Comments? Chandrika, Savarkanti. Sorry for.
If somebody was engaged in devotional service and they start to, after a while, start to see that service as like mundane, or, they don't really want to do it anymore because they don't feel like they're being appreciated or something like that, then it, obviously can become destructive, and to others as well. How would that person progress in continuing any devotional service if that's happening?
There is no loss or diminution in this path. So Prabhupada said, I heard at past time how one devotee, we were watching it, me and Divya Singh Prabhu were taking prasadam and listening to Prabhupada memories. And there's actually Mother Sandamani's Prabhupada memories tape, but the other devotee, that's not Krishna Kumari or Mother Sandamani. And they asked him, Prabhupada had this kind of idea to go say something about a god brother. This devotee came up to Prabhupada. And he said, Prabhupada, one of your god brothers is, and Prabhupada just said, there is no loss or diminution in this path. Meaning that there is absolutely zero loss for someone who does devotional service. And the only reason we progress is because there's some anarthas, there's some offenses that have taken place. And so there's going to be some cessation of progress, apparently, for some time. But one who does devotional service is delivered. There is no doubt about that. And so if we have sometimes in our community of devotees, there could be, if everybody goes back to God that is doing devotional service, why am I doing so many austerities? Why am I a brahmachari? Why not, get the best of both worlds? Because actually, devotional service is all done on the platform of love. There's no loss or diminution because it's done out of love. One who becomes a brahmachari or does a service to be better than others or to get respected or to do any of these things, it's useless. You're not going to get anything. It's pointless because it's all done out of love. So one who does austerities to increase his service for Krishna, that is very beautiful. That's why we do austerities, to increase our service. And so one who does devotional service, Krishna accepts that service. Krishna delivered Putana. Putana tried to kill God. She killed children constantly. That was her whole life. She was a child murderer. Krishna delivered her. And Krishna didn't just deliver her. She became a mother of Krishna in the spiritual world. So there is zero loss in any activity of devotional service. So if someone leaves, it's just a matter of them starting back up again. By that same process, satam kripa, causeless mercy of a devotee, equals I develop a taste for hearing and chanting. And when I develop a taste for hearing and chanting, I make progress. So one thing we should understand is that I didn't go so deep into it, but this is such an elaborate science that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur lays out, that all of the challenges we have, all the different fall downs and like pitfalls are them extensively. And so if someone it's not actually like, oh, we tend to be like, oh, they went away, we tend to be like that. But it's actually, someone who's wise, who has knowledge, they understand this is just a natural step. It's a natural step. Someone who, there's different things, even falling asleep in class. That's also, our acharyas have written about it. They've written about it. It's just one of the different, I think there's 6 different challenges one has coming to the stage of nishta. All these different steps are written about, and they're overcomable by that very same process. There's no loss or diminution. One will make absolute progress. And therefore, we have to have utmost respect for all devotees. And even Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes that he writes this, and this book, Madhurya Kadambini, it's like one of the heaviest hitting books I've ever read, because it calls you out so easily. That if we see, oh, there's a devotee, but he's being offensive, therefore I don't have to serve him, I don't have to respect him. You get just as much karma as they did. You'll suffer the same results for that offense of disrespecting a devotee who's apparently being offensive. Because it's understandable that this devotee has served Krishna, is serving Krishna, serve Krishna. And so, therefore, we have to have just utter humility and respect everybody who's serving Krishna. That's it. And so if someone goes away, we do everything we can to get them back. That's our service. And how do we do that? The same old process. Engage them in service. Just like, I'll give one example. My Guru Maharaj's very, very close friend, Durlabh Darshan. He was a devotee in the 70s, and he got deprogrammed 3 times, and somehow or another, he went away from devotional service after getting married. And so his parents hated him, obviously, because he was a devotee. They tried to deprogram him 3 times. He actually went through the whole Ted Patrick thing personally. And then after getting married, he fell away from devotional service. He became a regular guy, And so his parents wrote him back into the will. And then, years later, I think in 2013, my Gurudev stopped to see him and convinced him once again, come back to devotional service. He started chanting around. He started chanting 16 rounds again, and then he used that money to get that property and get Raj's house and so many things. On anybody, we have to see that they're all devotees. And if you read the Krishna book and the CC, devotees go through all kinds of ups and downs. It's not uncommon. Akura was serving Kamsa. Therefore, he got all entangled in the Chamantaka jewel incident, and then there was like a murder that took place, and he was kind of like part of it. Yet still, he's a pure devotee. So, therefore, api chet sudarachayo bhajate mamananyabhak sadoreva samantavya samyak bhavishito saha. Even if one is considered abominable, if they are unflinchingly devoted to Krishna, if Krishna is the goal of their life, then we have to see them as a sadhu. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, if you don't see them as a sadhu, Krishna thinks he takes that out on you. I don't like that. I see them as a sadhu, therefore you, if you're my devotee. So, yeah. Do you have something quick?
As far as satisfaction, I think to be satisfied, you really need to have a mood of gratefulness.
Right.
Like Damodar had his tailgate stolen, and of course he was upset about that, but then it's like, at least they didn't take the truck.
Right. Yeah, we want satisfaction. We got to be grateful. It's so important. Krishna's giving us so much. We find that even like Kalavecha Sridhar, he had like hardly enough to eat, yet he was always grateful. Always grateful to Lord Chaitanya.
He had such a great rasa.
Yeah. Bhagavatam ki. Let's leave it there the whole day. Sit here. You guys are all sitting there.